Hi, I'm Rhonda with the Time Embroidery Designs, and today we're going to take you through stitching out this in the hoop, always with you mini quilt. I have had several requests over the last couple of years to create a design similar to this with a cardinal, and I've always wanted to stitch it out too, just to have something to put next to my father's picture that we have displayed in our living room. So I think this will make a nice addition to where we have that. So let's go ahead and let's get started. Okay, so with all of our designs, you're going to get a PDF instruction sheet. It has step-by-step directions, a supply list. It'll tell you all the different pieces that you need to make this mini quilt, to make that in the hoop mini quilt. It also has a link to where you can find the wire stand that I just showed you. And as you can see, as you go through it, it does have step-by-step pictures, large pictures with really good instructions that'll take you through each and every step of the way, even if you've never done anything like this before, and it'll make it pretty easy for you. So you have that. It tells you the design size so that you can make sure it fits in the hoop that you want to use, and the stitch count, all the formats, and SVG files are included with this design so that you can either trim this applique cardinal in the hoop, or you can pre-cut the pieces, and I'll show you those in just a minute. So this is everything that you need. You need a 6x10 hoop or larger, and you need to hoop some medium weight cutaway stabilizer in that hoop. You're going to need a piece of batting. This is warm and natural batting. It's 6 inches wide by 10 inches tall. That's listed right there for you. You're going to need a piece of background fabric. And in today's video, we're going to make this in blue instead of green, just to have a different color and see how it looks. So you'll need an 8-inch wide by 12-inch tall piece of background fabric. And then I'm giving you these in order of how they're going to be used. So then you're going to need 2 pieces of applique fabric for the cardinal. And I used, as you can see, I have 2 different reds here. One's lighter for the bigger part of the bird, and then I have a darker red there for the wing. You could use prints. You can use whatever you want. You make those decisions. This small piece is 4 inches wide by 2.5 inches tall. This smaller piece is 3 inches wide by 1.5 inch tall for the wing. And like I mentioned a minute ago, we do include the SVG files. And what an SVG file is, if you don't know, it's used with cutters. I have a scan and cut, but you can cut this with a Cricut or any of the other cutters that may read SVG files. And you can pre-cut those pieces of fabric instead of trimming in the hoop. As we go along today, what I'm going to show you is trimming these pieces in the hoop, but you can do it this way too. So this is, makes it a little bit more convenient, and I'll even show you how those are used as we go along. So we have the batting, the front of the mini quilt, the 2 pieces that we need for the cardinal and the wing, and then the next piece that'll go on is the hanger. And that piece is 6 inches wide by 3.5 inches tall. We've folded in about 1/2 inch on each side and ironed it flat, and then it's folded in half and also ironed like that. And that's going to be this little hanger at the top right here. And then lastly, what goes on will be the back piece, of course. The opening for our mini quilts is up right behind the hanger, so it's not going to show. The back is just going to be solid like that, and you really won't even see where that opening is. All right, so that's everything we need to get started. So let's go over to the machine and start stitching. All right, so we'll load our hoop onto the machine, and the first step is just going to stitch out a running stitch in the shape of a rectangle that's the size of the mini quilt, and that's going to be our placement line for the batting, that 6x10 inch piece of batting that we cut earlier. And it's going to fit right inside of that. Just on a note too, when I cut my 6x10 piece of batting, I also give it a quick press so it's nice and flat. All right, so just put it in there. It should fit right inside of that line if you cut it the right size. And then we're going to take one of those 8 by 12 pieces of fabric and we're going to lay it right side up, right on top of that batting. I'm just checking to make sure I didn't accidentally move that batting a little bit when I was putting that fabric down. And you can tape it in place to make sure it doesn't move if you want to. And now it's going to stitch, step number 2 is going to stitch those two things in place. I am using a contrasting color thread here so that I can see those two little notches that's stitching right at the top. Those are our placement lines for our hanger tab that's going to go on towards the end. And I need to be able to see those two little tiny notches. So always use a contrasting color thread in that step. Okay, so the next step is the quilting, the background quilting. I choose a thread that blends in with the background, so I'll choose the same color as the background fabric, or maybe just, a tad bit darker than the background fabric. And for this particular quilt, we have a custom quilting that we created that is like an outline of the holly leaves and the little berries. And it stitches all over the background. So it's really cute and it matches with the whole theme of this mini quilt. So if you wanted to stitch that quilting in a contrasting thread color, you certainly can. I've seen some of our customers do it that way, and it looks really cute that way too. I kind of like it blending into the background, just so that the prominent thing is the embroidered design that goes on it. Okay, so I have sped this up so that it doesn't take as long. I stitched out the entire mini quilt at 600 stitches per minute, and it takes about 45 minutes to do it at that speed. For this, I just sped it up a lot so that it wouldn't take as long in this video. Let me turn down my phone because I forgot. Okay, the next step is going to stitch the holly leaves. And it's just one color green. Jonathan does have it split, like each leaf is split, and it's at a little bit of a different angle for both sides of the leaf. So it gives it, kind of a multi-dimensional color look to it just because the stitches are at different angles. Also saves you from some time for not having to change the color thread. All right, and you'll see that it's not making a mistake there. Those running stitches that are in between those leaves like that, what we do that for is to not have as many trims in the design, because when these single needle machines do a trim, they slow down, then stop, then cut the thread, and it takes a while. So if we can hide running stitches underneath another object, we're going to do it that way because it'll ultimately stitch out quicker for you. And those lines are going to be covered up by the branch stitching later on. Okay, so we have all the holly leaves stitched out, and now we're going to do the little berries, the little red berries, and those just take a couple minutes to stitch out too. See how those leaves kind of look two colors, but they're really not. All right, so we have our little berries there. And now we're going to stitch the branch, and you're going to see that it covers up all of those running stitches that prevented us from having too many trims in this design. It just covers it right on up. So this is the brown branch. And we're just stitching it out. Kind of makes me dizzy. I sped it up too much, didn't I? I don't like to stitch designs at a really high speed. I usually stitch almost everything I stitch out at 600 stitches per minute. Of course, we're always doing a lot of freestanding lace, so the machine just stays on that. But I actually prefer stitching things out at a slower speed just because I find it's less thread breaks and it's just You know, it rarely messes up at a slower speed versus if you have a really high speed. Even my commercial machine, I think that one's set on either 7 or 800 and not at 1,000 or whatever the highest speed on that one is. Okay, so next it's going to stitch out the placement line for part of the cardinal applique fabric. So that's what's stitching next. And you definitely want to stitch that out in a thread color that you can see. And what I want to show you here is the optional pre-cut SVG files that we talked about earlier. I pre-cut the fabric to fit in there with those SVG files on my brother's scan and cut. I also ironed a fusible product called Madeira Applique Magic to the back of it so that I could stick it in place easy. This particular product has a fusible side and a sticky side, and that paper covers the sticky side. So if you just peel off the paper, the back is sticky now. I don't have to use a messy adhesive spray or anything to stick it in place. It just sticks down. The SVG file fits right inside that placement line. Look how quick and easy that was. I just wanted to show you that as an option. But what we're actually going to do is I'm going to take that back off and I'll show you how to do it if you don't have a cutter, because I know some of you do not. So I just wanted to show you how that works. Okay, so let's grab the piece of fabric that we cut that fits there. And I'm changing the thread again simply because this is a video and I want to be able to show you where you can see the stitching really good on screen. Normally, if I was just doing this and I wasn't using a video, I'd probably just leave the red thread in there that I'm going to need to trim out the bird anyway. But in this case, I'm using white just so you guys can see it. All righty. So let's get that stitch down. And this is the tack down stitch for the applique fabric for the bird itself. Jonathan did digitize the bird in two pieces, the wing and the bird, so that you can use two different fabrics if you want. He likes to make it so you have a lot of choices. Okay, so there you see that, and we're going to trim it. So you have to remove the hoop from the machine. I would normally take the hoop off of the machine, put it on my cutting table where, you know, I can really get around and trim it easily. But so I didn't have to move the camera. I just trimmed it right here on the machine bed. And I'm using a Kai 5-inch double curved blunt tip scissors here. They're my favorite scissors for applique because the scissors are curved and it's really easy to manipulate them around the fabric in the hoop like that. And just trim all the excess away, and there you go. See, if you pre-cut it on a Brother Scan and Cut or Cricut, you can skip that step. You don't have to do that. Okay, so the next step is the placement line for the wing, and since it's going to stitch on that light blue background, I'm going to hurry up and change the thread here to a darker color so that you guys can see it there too. It's important when you're watching a video to be able to see that, right? These little mini quilts are actually easy and a lot of fun. They make great gifts too. All right, so it's just going to stitch the outline for the wing so that you see where the fabric needs to go. And again, I'm going to show you how easy it is if you have the fabric for the wing pre-cut. I used a red fabric that was just slightly, maybe a couple shades darker than the fabric that I used for the bird. So it, you know, it's got a nice little contrast there. I'm just going to peel off that paper backing and show you that it fits right in that place. I didn't make any adjustments on my Scan and Cut to the SVG file at all. I just loaded it in and cut it. So see how nice? I'm going to pull it off and show you how to do it if you don't have a cutter. So we'll just put the little piece of fabric that I cut for the wing right in that spot there, and we're going to tack it down, just kind of center it over the placement line. And we're going to do the same thing for the wing fabric that we just did for the bird. I left that green thread so you can see it. Not as good as the white, but you can still see it. And I'm going to remove the hoop and trim that around. It is a little harder if you don't take it off the machine, you know, especially with the 6x10 hoop. It doesn't quite fit in the throat space right there that's left, at least when it's sideways, you know. All right, so we got that trim. These are easy enough shapes to trim by hand like that. And then we're going to do the satin edging on the cardinal. So this next step is going to stitch the satin edging, the beak, and the tail, and the little poofy thing on top of the head. So it's going to zigzag all your edges of your fabric to help them, you know, not fray or anything. And I know some of you are going to stitch this little bird out in a printed fabric, so I kind of can't wait to see what y'all try to do with this. Jonathan did the same thing on the bird feathers on the tail that he did on the leaves. So it's the same color thread, but it's going in two different directions, like apart from each other. So it kind of gives the look of being two different color threads, but it's not. It's just one thread. And then we're going to stitch the black. It does have an eye, but a cardinal's eye is black too, so it's kind of hard to see. But there's a little circle there that stitches for the eye that you can feel that's kind of raised. If you want to glue like a little, you know, sparkly thing on the eye there, that would probably be really cute too. All right, so all that's left is the lettering. And you can certainly put that in whatever color you want. So the top says always, and then the bottom says with you. That's all we have left to stitch on here. And then we'll put it together. I like the fact that this mini quilt, really, you only have to pull a few color threads out. Green, red, black, and brown for the branch there. So you really don't have to decide on too many different color threads for this one. It's got a really pretty script for that wording up there too. So that's nice. I did forget to grab my dad's photo, but this is kind of what I wanted this for. I've been meaning to do this for a while. You know, there's like this old saying that when you see a cardinal, it's somebody visiting from heaven. And I hear a lot of people say that. You can find that little story or whatever it is all over the internet. And I thought it would be cute. My dad passed away in 2017, and we were very close. So I have pictures of him in my hallway. I have pictures of him in my living room. And even in my bedroom, I think. We did everything together. And I wanted to place this in my living room next to his photo. All right, so we have the whole front done. And now we're going to put that little tab where it goes. So you see those two little tiny notches there. If you can't see them really well, you can, you know, use a marker to make them a little bit longer to help you see. But we're going to take that little tab part that I showed you earlier that's folded in half and ironed. And we're going to make a mark on it 1 inch up from the folded edge. I have a little tiny ruler that's just a little 1 inch ruler. You don't have to use a ruler that small. I just find it convenient. And I'm going to take a water soluble marker. You can use a pointy piece of chalk, whatever you have, and mark a line 1 inch up from that folded edge. There we go. when we used to use the mini quilts in classes years ago, somebody came up with an idea to do it this way, and it was so easy and neat, and we've been doing that way ever since. All right, so that little piece of fabric gets centered between those two little lines that stitch at the top of the mini quilt, and the purple line that I just drew, we want it to line up and be even with the green stitching that's on the top of the mini quilt. So that's the use of the purple line. We just want it to go straight across the top and match up with the line on that top of rectangle. So it's kind of hard to see doing it, you know, on top of the machine bed here. But basically, we're just going to line it up with that on both sides. And we're going to tape it in place because don't want that to move while we're stitching it. So make sure you tape it down really good and take your time to make sure it's straight, because if this is not straight, when you go to hang it on that cute little stand, it's going to hang crooked. So make sure it's straight across. And I know it looks like it might be a little crooked here, but I took it off the machine while I was doing all this to make sure. And it's nice and straight all the way across, even with those lines that stitched right at the top. Okay, so now just pop it back on the machine. And the next stitch, I think we're at stitch 16 now. There's 17 color changes in this design. It's just going to stitch that in place so it doesn't move. And then you can remove the tape. After that stitch goes down, you can remove the tape. And we'll use that tape in the next step. I'm using 3M transport tape here. It works great for embroidery. It's actually a medical tape. So here's our last piece of fabric that we cut. It's the 8x12 piece for the back. You can use a different piece for the back if you want. And my coffee mini quilt, I actually used a coffee cup print for the back. It's kind of cute. So you just turn it right side down and center it over the other piece. I'm going to use those two pieces of tape that I just took off the top tab part and tape that down. And I don't really have to tape mine down because I like to starch and iron all my fabrics to kind of make them stiffer when I'm doing in the hoop projects like this. Okay, step 17 is just going to stitch everything together, and it makes like a little knot at each end so it doesn't unravel when you turn it right side out. I just left the red thread in here so you guys could see it. It's not going to show, it's on the inside. But you certainly could have changed to blue thread or whatever thread matches your project. And that's it. That's all we have to do on the machine. So we're going to take it over to the cutting table and I'll show you how to finish this up. All right, so first we're going to pop it out of the hoop. And we're going to turn it over and we're going to trim away the excess stabilizer. It's going to help the edges from being bulky. So let's get that out of the way. We don't have to trim the batting because we put the right size batting in there. So we don't have to trim that away. See how it fits all neatly in there? And then we're going to cut away that. You're not going to be able to cut the top one as close because it has those two tiny notches, but that's fine. And just make sure you don't cut through that last stitching. Just cut right up against it as close as you can without cutting through it. All right, so that will remove a lot of the bulk out of the seams of this. And then we're going to turn it here. And where that opening is, we want to leave the fabric long right there because we need to tuck it in and iron it shut back there. All right, let me switch scissors because these are a little dull. And what I'm doing right here is I'm cutting down to about 1/4 of an inch away from that final stitching. And I'm going to cut it, cut all the excess fabric away and just leave 1/4 of an inch or so all the way around, but I'm going to leave that long part there. So always do that part first so that I don't forget, because if I don't, sometimes I just get in a rush and I'll cut it all and forget I need to leave that longer part there. So always make sure I take care of that longer part before anything else. That way it stays that way and I don't accidentally trim it off. Okay, so the corners, I'm going to clip on a diagonal like that. That's going to also remove the bulk from the corners so that when you flip it right side out, your corners will be nice and square and they won't have that rounded look so much because they won't have that little bit of bulk of fabric right inside of them. Now the opening in this mini quilt is big enough for me to get my whole hand in. So we're going to flip it right side out. And it's not really hard to flip right side out at all. And like I said, I can get my whole hand in there. So I'm going to stick my hand in and push out as much of it as I can with just my hand. And then I want those corners to be nice and squared off. So that tool right there, that silver tool I have is by RNK. It's called a turning tool. I think that's what's written on it too, RNK turning tool. And just stick it inside. It has like a little metal ball on the end so it doesn't poke through the stitching. But you can really push out the corners really good with it. You don't want to do that with anything sharp because you don't want it to poke through the corners, but it works great for that. And then we're going to push in the excess fabric on the back right there in that top. So nowhere on this mini quilt are you going to see the opening seam when we're done. All right, so let's just give it a quick press. I know some of you don't like to iron, but I'm kind of an iron freak. I love to iron. I find it really, really relaxing. I know that's weird, but every Sunday night I spend an hour or two ironing our clothes for the week. I just put on a movie and iron, and I find it very relaxing. So I kind of like it. Of course, I use a lot bigger iron than this little tiny one that I'm using right here, but I like pressing things. Okay, so we're just going to tuck in that excess fabric again, and this little tiny iron fits in there so that I can iron it down flat. And I'm just going to neaten up that edge right there. Make sure it kind of goes straight across. Iron it down. And then I'm just going to use a fusible tape to close that up. Of course, you could hand stitch that closed if you want, but how quick is this? Just pull off a piece of this fusible tape and stick it right inside that opening. And just iron it shut. Easy peasy. I like this little iron because I can use it on my cutting table. And the wool mats kind of protect my cutting table a little bit. Give it a quick press. You can press your applique fabric down too because I have that stuff behind it. Well, no, I don't on this one. I had it on the pre-cut. So there we have the blue and we have the green. Which one of those do you like? All right, so wasn't that fun? It was really easy too, wasn't it? So now we have a blue one. Which one do you like better? You like the green one back there, or you like the blue one? Or what other colors might you stitch this on? I like to use this grunge fabric. I forgot to mention that earlier, that it was actually grunge fabric. And what I like about using this fabric for my mini quilts is that it has kind of a pattern, kind of a blotchy look to it, like that. That gives it a little more interest than just a solid color fabric. Because I find if you use a busy, busy print in the background, it really takes away from the design that you're stitching on top of it. So I kind of like to do that, and I'll use a print up here for the tab, for the little hanger thing, just to make it a little more fun. So what color would you stitch this out in? Thanks for joining us this afternoon. And if you stitch this out, we would love to see photos of it. Join our Facebook group. And of course, we definitely want to see what you do with it. So bye for now. See you next time. Thanks.